Hi, I am having a hard time deciding what I'm going to talk about today, and I finally decided I would tell you the story about the Acardiac twins. Now, I have 5 kids, believe it or not, but I will only get to see 3 of them grow up because 2 of them were Acardiac twins and they both died, unfortunately. Now, Acardiac twins is something that is really, really rare, and most people have never even heard about it. Most doctors haven't even heard about it, actually. And this story starts in like late September 2004, shortly before my daughter's first birthday. And I did a pregnancy test, and it turned out I was pregnant with my third child, or so I thought. Now, the thing is, when I was I don't know, I think 18 something, I had an ectopic pregnancy, which means wasn't planned. I didn't plan on getting pregnant. It just happened anyway. And the egg or the baby sort of attached in the fallopian tube on my right side. So, and I got very, very sick and I almost died basically. And since then, they had to operate on me and they had to remove the fallopian tube totally. And since then, I've always been getting these very, very early ultrasounds to make sure that the baby or the egg attaches inside my uterus and not outside of it, so that I won't have to go through that again, because it got really serious. I almost died back then. And we did this time as well with the third baby. And well, I was kind of feeling funny this time. It was my third pregnancy, or fourth actually, counting the extrauterine pregnancy. And I was feeling kind of funny, and I told the midwife who was doing the examination that, look closely, maybe there's more than one or something. And we laughed about it, and we had a joke about it. But she did. She looked more closely, and turns out there was another one. There were actually 2. Except the other, I don't know, pregnancy baby was a lot smaller than it should be. There wasn't a heartbeat or anything. So we naturally thought that this was a twin pregnancy or a duplex pregnancy that wouldn't wouldn't happen. One of them would just disappear. This happens, so it's no big deal. But there was one baby who there was a heartbeat and everything, yeah, and this was very, very early, so you can't see, it looks like a tiny pea or something, a bean, and you can see the heartbeat. That's all. So I went home, and no big deal. And the weeks went by, and my belly kept growing, and I started feeling movements. Someone was definitely in there, kicking and, yeah, moving about. And then I was going on the ultrasound that everyone does at, I think I was maybe in week 18, 19, 18, I think, of the pregnancy. And we got a really, really big surprise. All of us, including the midwife doing the examination. Because it turns out that there was, in fact, 2 babies in there, but only one of them was alive. And the other one was about half the size of the healthy baby, and it didn't have a heartbeat now either, but it had been growing. And it was very, very strange indeed. And also the midwife doing the examination, she couldn't find a head. She said she couldn't find the baby's head, the second baby's head. So it was all very confusing. And I had once heard a story about a friend of a friend who had where it turned out during her pregnancy that her baby did not have a brain, that it would die instantly as it was born, and no longer attached to the mother, so to speak. So this was kind of the image that I had in my head when I went home that day. And I was to come back to the hospital the next day for another examination and to meet with doctors and stuff. So I did. I went back, and the doctors had been studying up on what this could be, and they'd been looking at the pictures that they had taken during the ultrasound the previous day. And their suspicion was that this could be an Acardiac twin pregnancy. But nobody really knew what this entailed, what it meant, how they were going to handle it, or anything. So I went back and I had this another examination, and this time they found the head, thankfully. But there was no heartbeat. There was the beginning of a brain and the beginning of a heart, but they didn't work. However, the baby did have working kidneys, so it was producing its own amniotic fluid. I'm sorry. So it was dead. It was a dead baby that was growing, but with some functions that were working, enabling it to actually grow. Now, during the days and weeks that followed, I was shipped back and forth between different hospitals and doctors and professors, and I had all the available expertise in Sweden given to me to work on this case and to find out what this was and how we were going to handle it, and so on and so forth. Now, what we learned was that the Acardiac twin would in fact keep growing, because what was happening was that the healthy baby and the Acardiac twin had blood vessels in common, and the healthy baby was pumping blood from his heart to the placenta, and from there to the Acardiac twin. So his heart was pumping blood for two people. And this would put an enormous strain on him. And most Acardiac babies, they either die from cardiac arrest while you're still pregnant, or the labor will start early because the baby's heart gets so distressed. So in addition to being examined several times a day to try to find out what this was and how we were going to handle it, we also had to do cardiac examinations for the healthy baby, and we did everything. In the end, it was decided that I was going to have a surgery to try to save the life of the still healthy baby. We had found that his heart was starting to get a little bit larger, but he wasn't really affected by it yet. So there was still a chance that we could get him through this. It was a boy, by the way. They were both boys. There was a chance we could get him through this without, at least with a chance of survival and to grow up a healthy baby. However, the expertise and the technology to do this procedure wasn't found in Sweden, or the expertise wasn't found in Sweden at least. So they contacted an expert in England, Dr. Baski Thakhtilian. Awesome man. If you see this, give me a holler, okay? I'll never forget you. He didn't have the opportunity to come to Sweden to perform this surgery, so instead I had to go to England, which I did. I was flown there, me and my husband, then husband. We were flown to London, and we went straight to the hospital, and we had a talk with the doctor, and it was so different from Swedish healthcare, because in Sweden it's like you should be really, really thankful that the doctor takes time out of his busy schedule to actually see you. And here it was like, well, we got our own room to sit and talk in, and the secretary offered us food and beverages, and we were given the opportunity to decide again whether or not we wanted to do this procedure, because there was a lot of risk involved also. At best, there was a 50-50 chance that this would turn out well, but doing a surgery inside the uterus during a pregnancy is, at least this kind of surgery, is a lot of risk involved. So this Dr. Basky told us that we could take our time and decide if we wanted to do this and give this a shot. And in the meantime, he would go over to the Children's Hospital that was just adjacent to the building we were in, and that he would remain on the hospital property until we had decided whether or not we wanted to do this. And it didn't matter how long it took us to decide. If we took 10 minutes or 10 hours, he would be there. He would wait for us. And I'm telling you, there's no Swedish doctor who would do that. Never. And, well, we decided that we were going to do the procedure because the odds of the baby getting out of this otherwise in good health was not very good at all. And this was also very late in the pregnancy. I was at 21 weeks at this point when we were doing this surgery, and this is so rare that this Dr. Basky was considered an expert, and he had I think 14 cases from all over Europe, and 14 cases was enough to deem him an expert on the matter. So you get how rare this is. However, this surgery was most successful if done prior to week 14 of the pregnancy. Later than that, it was a gamble, basically. But I decided it was worth it. I wanted to give the baby the best chances I could. So we decided I was going to have the surgery. So the doctor came back, and we were put in a room there was a lot of people there. There were nurses and there were doctors, and this was a procedure that was done while I was awake. It was a laser procedure. So basically what they did, they numbed my belly and put a huge needle. It was like enormous, just straight through my belly and straight into the straight through the abdominal wall into my uterus. And in there they put this needle, they put like a laser, I don't know, it was like a thread or something, that they put through the needle and into my uterus. And what they were going to do was to laser off the connection, the umbilical cord that was connecting the two babies. However, it was very, very difficult, because what it looked like on the ultrasound, it was that the Acardiac twin had a very, very, very short umbilical cord. It turned out, however, later after birth, that he actually had a really long umbilical cord. It was just that it was wrapped around him. But what you could see on the ultrasound and while doing this surgery was like a tiny piece. And it was also very, very close to the amniotic sac that they had a separate amniotic fluid sacs, both babies, and there was a chance that they would rupture the healthy baby's amniotic sac while doing this. So they decided instead to laser the blood vessels in the uterus that were kind of common for both babies. So they did, and well, I had penicillin and a lot of pills. Well, they gave me to do, because there's also a very, very big risk for infection after this kind of procedure. So I got this like preventive medical treatment. And I went back to Sweden, and they said that in very, very rare cases, the the blood flow between the children could remain, but it was very, very, very rare. So, well, anyway, we went back to Sweden, and this was a Saturday, late Saturday night, I think we came back. I had the surgery on Friday night, and Monday morning I was on a new examination at the hospital, and of course it turned out that the blood flow between the babies were still there. I basically, I think I picked every rare thing there was able to pick in this, because also what they knew then was Acardiac twins were always what do you call it? Homozygotic? They were always one egg twins. However, it appeared that I had two egg twins, a cardiac, which was not registered anywhere in medical history ever. So, well, however, I came back, the blood flow was still there between the twins, and we were like, oh, what do we do now? It was just, just have to wait for the heart to start giving up on the other baby. Hopefully he will be strong enough and big enough to survive birth at that stage, and yada yada. It was a very hard day, that Monday. Early Tuesday morning, I woke up in pain. I had abdominal cramps, and I just knew that I was about to go into labor. It didn't feel like going into labor as I had the previous times with my older kids. It was different, but there was no doubt I was going into labor now. So we went into the hospital, and they found out that I was having an infection, in spite of all the medicine they had given me in England, and that I had brought with me to Sweden. I was still taking. I still got a huge infection inside my uterus, and that the labor, in fact, was about to start due to the infection. So they gave me a lot of medicine to kind of calm this down and to stop the labor from, well, starting. And after a few hours, I started feeling better. It kind of calmed down a bit, and I could go home if I wanted to. So we decided we would, and I stepped out of the room and I said goodbye to my doctor, and I came down to the garage, and it started again. And I thought it was probably because I'd been moving about, and I just wanted to go home and lie down, and I was thinking maybe it would go away if I got home and could lie down and rest. So we came home. It was sometime during the afternoon, and I lay down immediately, just rested, and did absolutely nothing. But around 8 or 9 that night, I realized that this wasn't going to stop. I would have to go back to the hospital again. So we came back around, I think, 10 at night, And again, they gave me all sorts of medicine to try to stop what was happening. But sometime during the night, or I think they probably realized rather early that this was not going to work. And they came. I have had doctors came in to my room in the middle of the night and talked about the baby and what they could do to try to save him if he was born that prematurely. This was very, very premature. I was at 21 weeks and 6 days, I believe, and I think 22 weeks is where that's kind of the limit where they try at all to save their lives. If born previously to that, it is considered a late abortion, basically. However, this was a prestige case. It's being so rare now. So, and I was hours away from that 22-week limit. So, I think the next day, the next morning, they knew that they couldn't stop this, and they told me that this is it. We cannot prevent this from happening. The babies are being born today. So we prepared for that. They prepared the neonatal department for our arrival, and they handled it beautifully, I have to say. They did. This was Akademiska sjukhuset, the academic hospital in Uppsala. Because the babies were lying so that the healthy baby would come first. He was like at the bottom of my uterus, and then there was the Acardiac twin on top. So in the room, when the labor started for real, and I have to tell you, I have never been through anything so painful as this labor and that night prior to giving birth to the twins. It was nothing like giving birth in a normal matter. It was, it hurt so much. It hurt so much I could barely breathe. However, my body was under a lot of strain, and somewhere around lunch, around noon that day, this was February 9th, 2005, then it was me and my then husband and the midwife and the doctor. The four of us was in the room. And outside in the hallway stood the entire team from the neonatal department, and they wanted to give me the opportunity to give birth in peace, basically, without being, hanging over me. They were all standby outside in the hallway. And I had told my husband that I wanted him to follow the baby when they took him, and that I wanted to give birth to the Acardiac twin alone. Because during these weeks when all this was happening and we were trying to find out what it was all about, I had done a lot of research, and I had seen a lot of pictures of Acardiac twins, and they don't develop like a normal baby. They look more like, best case scenario, they look more like a fetus at week, I don't know, maybe week 12 something of the pregnancy. So definitely a human baby, but still not even close to what a done human baby looks like when they are born. And Acardiac twins are also they can be very scary to look at. You can Google it if you want, but if you are at all sensitive to such things, don't do it, because it's not a pretty sight. It's not. It's scary. So I knew my then husband was sensitive to such things. So I told him I wanted him to go with a healthy baby. So I don't know, so the baby wouldn't be alone, or well, the baby wouldn't be alone, but I wanted him to be there because I couldn't, and I wanted to give birth to the Acardiac twin alone. And as I had this infection, and the entire thing was it was a very brutal procedure, this birth of the twins. And when my water broke, it was like a cannonball. It was so much pressure inside my uterus, and I was still in a lot of pain. And then the baby was born, and he was so tiny. He was 470 grams, and he was 22 centimeters long. And I'll show you pictures later on. I'll put some pictures at the end of this video, and you'll see how small he was. And I got to see him for like a minute or two, and then the midwife took him away, and my husband went with them. And somewhere shortly after that, my body went into shock, which was I think it's one of the most scary things I've ever experienced physically, because my mind was absolutely clear, but I could not get my body to respond in any way at all. I was shaking. My entire body was really, really shaking. I had a hard time controlling my breath to breathe normally, or somewhat normally at least. I couldn't stop shaking. I could not. The midwife and the doctor were trying to talk to me, but I couldn't reply because my jaw locked. The muscles in my jaw locked. So I wasn't able. I could think my answers, but I couldn't say them. It was absolutely impossible. And they ran out, and they got blankets, and I got more medicine in my IV to stop this, and eventually it did stop. And I then gave birth to the placenta first, actually, and after that the Acardiac twin came. And I don't know, I guess I was kind of lucky, I guess, because he didn't look like most of the pictures that I'd seen of Acardiac twins. Didn't look scary. He actually looked like a fetus at approximately week 12. He was just less developed than his brother. Fairly the same size, actually. It was a boy, I could tell. And of course he didn't breathe or anything. He just lay there. And I got to see him, and then they took him away. And I was still very sick, of course. That didn't stop just because the labor was over. They basically pumped me full of every medication they could find, and it took maybe an hour before I could go down to the neonatal department myself and see my other baby, the healthy baby. And he was so small. He was so small. He was lying in an incubator, a glass incubator. It was glass all around. You've seen those on TV. And he was so dark. He was so dark. He looked like he'd been lying on the beach all day. And they told me I could put a hand in the incubator and pat him carefully, gently. Or actually, what they said was I could put my hand or my fingers on him. I couldn't like stroke him like this, because when they're born this early, their skin is so fragile that if you try to do this, it comes off. It literally comes off. So I could like put my finger on him, and his skin was really dark. He looked like he'd been lying on the beach all day, and he was sticky. It felt like they had dipped him in honey or something. And they told me that the reason he was so dark is that the strain of the labor had bruised him. His entire body was one big bruise, and that's why he was so dark. His skin was so dark. And he had a tube down his throat, and he had like wires and stuff everywhere. And this tiny, tiny, tiny baby. And his main doctor was, oh, he was huge. He had enormous hands, and he was working on this tiny, tiny baby, and it looks so surreal, so surreal. You can't imagine. And they did everything they could, but the thing is, when they're born that prematurely, their lungs aren't fully developed. And as the doctor explained it to us then, he said it's like a tree that you have like the stem and you have the branches, but what you need for the body to get oxygen, for the blood cells and for all the cells in the body to get the oxygen that they need, is the tiny, tiny, tiny branches out, way out on the big branches. And when they're born that early, they don't have that. It hasn't developed yet. And he had problems with this. He was given oxygen, but he couldn't distribute it out into his body, and you can't help them with that. And at one point, his left lung collapsed, and they took like a, I don't know, it looked like a wire or something, and just pushed it straight through his chest, straight through his chest cavity and into his lung, and to inflate it again because it deflated. And it looked so brutal, but I don't think he felt much of that because they were giving him morphine also so that he wouldn't feel pain or anything. But shortly after that, they decided that there was nothing else they can do. They had tried everything, and he just couldn't distribute the oxygen that he needed throughout his body. He was going to die also. So they told us that the best thing would be to take him out of the incubator and put him on my chest and just let him lie there until he died, because it would make him calm. The sound of my heart would make him calm, because it was a sound he was used to hearing. And they would give him all the morphine they could so that he wouldn't feel any pain or anything, and it would all be very quiet. And they predicted that this would be very quick, maybe an hour tops, before he passed away. So we had it was like a booth in this neonatal department that was kind of ours, and they put up walls, and they put in these really, really comfortable chairs for me and my husband to sit in, and they took him out of the incubator and they put him on my chest. I have pictures of that too, I'll show you. And he lay there for hours. Actually, it took 5 hours before he finally gave up. He was so strong. And he was on my chest, and as you can see, I have a tattoo here. This is his palm, actually, at the same spot that he had his hand while we were sitting there. He was lying on my chest. He had his head here and his hand like this. And the last thing that happened before he passed away was he kind of scratched my chest, and then he was gone. All the monitors just went flat. And this was late at night. It was like 10 o'clock at night. And they took him and they did handprints and footprints, and they took pictures. They had the hospital photographer come take pictures of him. We had before he passed away, we had an emergency baptism also, which is a story of itself. It was so tiny. When they're that small, they can't have clothes on. They can't have diapers, nothing like that. So what they do when they need to baptize children like that in an emergency situation, they have like the front of this, this, what do you call it, dress. So they just lay it on top of the baby, and they did this with him. And we gave him the name Oliver. And my husband broke down totally during this ceremony of when he was baptized, because he felt it was more like a funeral, because it looked like a see-through casket, this incubator that he was still lying in there. And he broke down totally. But I didn't. I remained rather calm, actually, until after he had passed away, and I felt that I needed to get some fresh air or something, so I stepped outside, and I sent a text message to one of my friends, and I think maybe one of my sisters as well, saying that it's over, he has passed away now. And then I broke. Then I just, I cried. Oh my God, I cried. So, well, that's a long story. Well, I was going to say long story short. It's actually kind of long, basically. But it is, it's even longer when I tell you all the details of it. And in retrospect, I think I'm basically pretty happy with how the hospital handled everything, and the help I got, and the things that happened later on. I think I'll put that in a different vlog, actually, because this is getting really long now. And I'll explain more about the medical stuff also, I think. I think I've never felt bad that it turned out the way it did. I was grieving, of course. I was sad for a while afterwards. But given the alternative, being born that early, he probably would not have had the option of growing up healthy. He would probably be sick a lot. His heart was affected by then, and he just didn't have good odds of getting a normal, healthy life, being born that early and having been through what he had been through. So I actually think it was for the best that he passed away. I do. And I also find great comfort in the fact that the first and the last thing that he heard in life was the sound of my heart.